All right, folks. Uh, cool. Alrighty. Yeah, so just for a start, can I acknowledge Member of Parliament, Scott Willis, Professor Janet Stevenson, and the other leaders in the room, the committee itself for putting this on in 19 years, pretty amazing, and acknowledge the student work out there. It's pretty amazing, and for this to be going for 19 years is amazing. Today, I guess we're going to head into the world of what's happening out at the Dunedin Airport to reduce our consumption and particularly what we've done in the last 4 to 5 months. Yeah, so it's probably pretty sort of micro from some of the other topics. So now, do I have a clicker somewhere? Beauty. Oh, not the mouse. Okay. Thanks, folks. So as you can see, this is our sustainability report. Solar panels. So energy is a big part of our sustainability strategy. So we're looking at about 260 panels there. You may not see them as you're going back and forwards, but that's on the terminal and the fire station. So yeah, you might see them if you're on an ATR and you're walking off and just look up, and that's fantastic. And yeah, feel free to have a look at our sustainability report. So that's on our website. If you want to dive into some of the details behind some of these things, we've fully disclosed our carbon emissions and our assurance there. Yeah, so why energy for us at the airport? So carbon emissions. Yeah, we're 50% owned by the DCC. There's a carbon roadmap. Yeah, we've got shareholder expectations essentially to be managing this stuff, and the engine room of our emissions reductions that we need to achieve by 2030 is energy, is electricity. So it's about 2/3 of our scope 1 and 2 is electricity. So you can see here, this has been around for a couple of years. We're in line, in the last year, we're in line with our linear downward trend. So that's cool. So I think that the key thing I wanted to highlight there is that it's actually nothing new out at the airport, but you may not have seen it. So this system here is buried in behind some of the walls. So it's a ground source heat pump. Wonderful, brave engineers back in 2006 when they were doing the whole terminal. They put the system in. So back then, if we take ourselves back 19 years, this was kind of new tech in New Zealand, right? So absolutely wonderful, and it makes my job a hell of a lot easier that I'm not having to deal with a coal boiler or a gas boiler, etc., and trying to remove those things. So it's great, isn't it, that sure, some of these ideas are new, but also some of these ideas have been around for quite a while, and it's just good engineering. So thank you to the engineers. Before I get into the what and the how, I guess just to give you folks context of what's actually happening out here. So we all know the terminal, right? Or yeah, you look at the website, what's happening with my flight? Okay, jump in the car, bus, whatever, going out to the airport, car park, into the terminal. Cool. We also own 290 hectares around the airport. So that comprises a number of other businesses. Yeah, one of them is 2 dairy farm operations. Another one is the village. So they're all our houses. We've got a wastewater treatment plant. So there's all sorts of different and various loads, yeah, that form part of our electricity consumption. To give you some context, you're talking about 3 meg of consumption. So that's across not just what we operationally use, but what we then on charge to tenants. Cool. So it's a fairly simple model, folks, with how we might achieve 30% of grid consumption reduction by 2030. So roughly we're talking 7% from conservation projects, roughly 7% from control. I'll come to these in more detail shortly. And then probably a good 16 from renewables. Yeah. So that those panels that this fella over here and co has put in is you're sort of talking in one project, you're talking 10% maybe. I mean, that's wonderful. And I think what excites me in general about sustainability, because my role in sustainability is not just energy, it's right across the board, freshwater discharges, contaminated land, all sorts. But with electricity and energy, it's smart finance, it's smart capital. I was just talking to someone this morning, you're talking about a 4-year payback on foodstuffs in Christchurch, so having that lined up with actually reducing emissions is just wonderful. So, cool. So conservation. Yeah. So the old adage that's the cheapest energy is that which you don't use. I think that was the chief executive of ECA last year, if you remember that. So what we've done, we've completed 3 or 4 more terminal spaces, so retrofitting halogen sodium adjacent with LED. So we're about 80% of the terminal footprint now. Business case and consenting for stage 2 of the runway rollout. So that's again sodium adjacent, halogen adjacent to LED. It's quite a big load out there. And it's interesting from a general environmental point of view because you've got some ground contamination issues to deal with. So it's not just a case of, oh, let's dig some holes and put some new cables in and some new light pots, but there's all these other steps that come into the business case. We've now got an energy committee, so that's just building capability within our business for us to actually do things. And then fourth, we've got some money from ECA came in the last couple of months. So that's nice. That it helps with the business case when you can kind of say, hey, we've done some stuff and there's just 30 grand that's just come in as well. So that's nice. 2, control. So managing and control our usage. So so what you can see here on the slide is just it's a BMI tool. So we get that monthly. The energy committee looks at some of these numbers and goes, what have we used? Have we saved what we think we're going to save with the projects? Where do we compare to last year? Where do we compare to last month? And there's a really cool thing that we've designed where on these trends, we've actually indexed our electricity usage against outside temperature. So we've predicted what we ought to be using based on temperature. So if we're fluctuating over that, then it gives us a trigger to go, hang on, there's something going wrong. We need to change the settings. And another thing is probably related more to our BMS is that you've got, so this is just a screen cap of our machine learning tool that sits on our BMS. So Shane is probably more expert and more further advanced with this. So Coppertree is the company. The university have had a lot more success and are more advanced than we are. But just to give you an idea, early doors, machine learning does its thing. There's 20 grand savings. So in terms of a quantum, you're talking about that could be 15% of our consumption right there. So they're great tools. And I think Shane's maybe got an even more impressive business case around that. So renewable, so what we're looking at here, 260 panels, you're talking about 145 kilowatts. So that might be 10% of our usage, which is great. And then the other thing I'd mention on our renewables is that we think part of that solution is what's the storage that we might have on site? Yeah. So we've got a little BESS that's just been installed at the moment. So that sits alongside our airfield lights. And so that helps to reduce our generator usage because we need to switch to basically a solid state of electricity for when it's foggy conditions so that you don't, if you have a grid outage, then the lights could go down while the plane's landing, if that makes sense. So that's cool, that's happening. They've poured a slab and it's about to go in. And then second, we've completed a pre-feasibility on a 1 meg BESS for the terminal ICP. So Queenstown got one over the line at 1 meg, but that was the tech demo 40% from Mika, which has ended. So now, so the screws come on us to go, can we find a business case to make that work? I think one of the interesting things that is maybe different to folks and business cases you're used to is that we typically look for a 7.5%. So return on capital. So I'll start with return on capital. You might look at the cost of capital and just what does it cost at the bank? Okay, can we meet that? What we need to do in the aviation industry is more look at a weighted cost of capital. So that includes risk. So you're talking about 7.5%. So for us to get a positive return on something like a BESS, it's got to be above 7.5%. So solar panels is great for that, but BESS is a bit harder. So that's me, folks. Oh, actually, before I get to questions, just wearing my other hat, Electrified Dunedin. Yeah, that was a great event in October and about 100 people at that event. And if you weren't there or haven't heard about it, think of the home show anywhere, Dunedin, Auckland, Wellington, whatever, but just for electrification. Yeah, it was a wonderful event, trade stalls, community. It was great. So if you want to learn more about it and talk to Christy from Aurora, James from Dunedin Solar, myself, Freddie from Te Whatu Ora, and we're having a Christmas party on the 10th of December at Good at 6:30. So come and talk to us if you want to find out more and get involved. Yeah, questions. Sorry, while you're doing that, how are we for time?
We've probably got time for a couple of questions.
Ooh, good. That's good. Janet's going, gee, I don't believe it.
So just a quick question. So I guess, yeah, great initiatives you're doing on site. Of course, the elephant in the room is, what to do about aviation itself. Have you been doing any thinking about that?
Yep, aviation. Very, 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 very difficult to replace the energy density that fossil fuels have and run these big birds with electric or eSAF, SAF, whatever. I haven't heard the solution yet. I can't see anything drastic happening within New Zealand in the next 5-10 years. It'd be great if it did. Japan's already started mandating SAF 10%. Australia making noises that might follow suit. Maybe New Zealand comes in behind that, and you might see a shift and say, let's say if the government started mandating SAF or a version of whatever version of SAF, then maybe, because apparently you've got the banks and the venture capital is actually just sitting there and it's going, you mandate it, New Zealand government, and we've got the cash sitting there and it'll pour in. However, that's problematic. You've still got an emission factor for all you carbon nuts out there, emission factor on combusting eSAF, right? Or SAF, so it's, I guess I'm just a little bit skeptical about, okay, you start with a 10%, say, mandate. So you've still got 90% fossil fuels, and then you've still got, I don't know, 30%, 40% emission factor on that combustion. So I guess I feel free to enlighten me, but I'm probably a bit grinchy about ideas that we have to change that at the moment. What I can see for something like Dunedin and Otago is maybe 2035 to 2045, we might see some small airplanes with some batteries and are going from here to Imbers, here to Wanaka, here to Queenstown, here to Milford, go and walk the Milford Trek. You know, you've got that little plane. Most folks probably know about it, the wee mail plane that's going between Blenheim and Wellington and maybe up to Hamilton, I'm not quite sure. But it's got a tiny payload. So that is my answer right now. And, you know, feel free, we can chat more at the morning tea lunches too, because there's probably folks here that have dove much deeper than I have.